She didn't know his name when he first saw her on that billboard in Gangnam, glowing, untouchable, draped in gold silk that worshipped every dangerous curve of her body. Kang Min-ho, heir to Seoul's most feared syndicate, felt something crack open inside his chest. Obsession. Hunger. Need. He'd built empires on control, but this woman, this goddess who smiled like she owned the world, made him feel powerless. And powerful men don't stay powerless for long. He would have her, one way or another, even if it destroyed them both. Welcome back to African Korean Tales, my beautiful and amazing family. I'm so happy to have you here once again. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our interesting stories. And please take a quick second to like this video, comment, and share it with someone who loves emotional stories. It really helps the channel grow and boosts our community. Now get comfortable, because today's story is intense. Let's dive right in. The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of the black Maybach as it crawled through Seoul's neon-drenched streets. Inside, Kang Min-ho sat perfectly still, his sharp jawline catching the red glow of passing traffic lights. His fingers drummed once against his thigh, the only sign of the restlessness coiling beneath his tailored brioni suit. "Boss, the shipment cleared customs," his right-hand man, Jae-sung, said from the front seat. "No complications." Min-ho didn't respond. His dark eyes were fixed on the massive digital billboard towering above the intersection. And there she was again. Celine Rivers. The African model who'd somehow invaded every corner of his city in the past month. Her face was everywhere, magazines, subway stations, luxury storefronts. But it was this particular image that had stopped his world cold 3 weeks ago. She wore a golden gown that clung to her body like liquid fire, the fabric tracing the dramatic curve of her waist before flaring over hips that could make a man forget his own name. Her skin glowed like warm honey under studio lights, and her eyes, deep, intelligent, defiant, looked directly into the camera with a confidence that felt almost confrontational. Beautiful didn't begin to cover it. She looked like a challenge. Like trouble wrapped in silk. Like everything he'd trained himself not to want. "Sir," Jae-sung's voice pulled him back. "The meeting?" "Cancel it," Min-ho said quietly. "But the Busan." "I said cancel it." His tone didn't rise, but the temperature in the car dropped 10 degrees. Jae-sung knew better than to push further. The next day, Min-ho stood in his penthouse office overlooking the Han River, phone pressed to his ear. Below him, the city sprawled like a kingdom he'd spent 10 years claiming, one bloody negotiation at a time. He'd inherited his father's empire at 25 after a car bomb meant for him had killed his parents instead. 3 years later, he'd consolidated power, eliminated rivals, and built something even his father couldn't have imagined. Control was everything. Control meant survival. "Find out everything," he told his intelligence chief. Where she's staying. Her schedule. Security detail. Who she's meeting. Everything. "Understood, boss." "Should we approach?" "No." Min-ho's reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows, broad shoulders, cold eyes, a face that had made grown men confess secrets before he'd even touched them. "Just watch. Report to me directly." He ended the call and pulled up his phone's photo gallery. 3 screenshots. All of her. He didn't remember saving them, but there they were, glowing in his palm like stolen treasures. This was dangerous. He knew it. Obsession made men sloppy, vulnerable. But he couldn't stop the hunger spreading through his chest every time he saw her face. Later that evening, the report came through. Celine Rivers, 26, American-born, currently in Seoul for a 3-month contract with Zenith Fashion House. Staying at the Signal Hotel. No romantic attachments on record. Close with her manager, a woman named Patricia. Professional, punctual, and by all accounts, untouchable. Min-ho smiled for the first time in days. Untouchable. He'd see about that. The following morning, Celine stood in the glass-walled conference room of Zenith's headquarters, arms crossed, watching the city wake up beneath her. She'd arrived in Seoul 6 weeks ago with one goal: dominate this market and return to New York with contracts that would make her unstoppable. She was tired of being exoticized, fetishized, or reduced to her curves. She had brains, ambition, and a work ethic that had carried her from Brooklyn housing projects to Milan runways. This campaign, a global luxury rebrand, was her chance to prove she belonged at the very top. "Celine, they're ready," Patricia called from the doorway, tablet in hand. Her manager wore her usual expression of controlled chaos. "How bad?" Celine asked, turning. "Creative director wants changes to the final shoot. Something about raw authenticity." Patricia rolled her eyes. "Which means they want you half-naked on a rooftop at dawn." Celine laughed, the sound rich and unbothered. "They always do. Let's go negotiate." She walked into that boardroom like she owned it, her burgundy blazer tailored perfectly over a body she'd learned to weaponize and protect in equal measure. The executive stood when she entered, a small victory. Respect, even if some of it came from wanting her rather than valuing her. The meeting dragged on, but Celine held her ground. No nudity. No exotic jungle queen nonsense. She was selling luxury, not stereotypes. By the time she left, she'd rewritten half the creative brief and earned 3 grudging nods of approval. "You're terrifying when you negotiate," Patricia said in the elevator down. "Good," Celine replied, checking her reflection in the polished steel doors. "Terrifying pays." That evening, Min-ho received the update he'd been waiting for. Celine would be attending a private fashion industry gala at the Latte Hotel tomorrow night. Exclusive. High security. The kind of event where Korea's elite mingled with foreign investors and celebrities. "Get me an invitation," he told Jae-sung. "Boss, you hate these things." Min-ho's smile was cold. "I've changed my mind." The next night, Celine stepped out of her car into a storm of camera flashes. Her gown was a masterpiece, midnight blue silk that poured over her curves like water, the deep V neckline framing the elegant column of her throat. Her hair was swept up, exposing the graceful line of her neck, and the diamond earrings catching light with every movement. She smiled for the cameras, professional and untouchable, before disappearing into the hotel's grand ballroom. Inside, crystal chandeliers threw golden light across Seoul's most powerful players. Celine accepted champagne from a passing waiter and began her rounds, handshakes, polite laughter, the careful dance of networking. Patricia worked the room beside her, setting up meetings, securing introductions. "Celine Rivers?" A voice like warm smoke came from her left. She turned to find a tall Korean man in an impeccable black tuxedo. Handsome in that clean cut, actor-like way, too handsome, probably aware of it. His smile was bright and practiced. "Lee Hyun-woo," he introduced himself, offering his hand. "I'm a photographer. I've been following your campaign. Incredible work." Celine shook his hand briefly. "Thank you. Are you shooting for Zenith?" "No, freelance. But I'd love to collaborate sometime." His eyes traveled down her dress and back up, quick, but not quick enough. "You're even more stunning in person." Celine's smile tightened. "Here we go. That's kind of you." "I'm serious. I could make you look." "She already looks perfect." The voice came from behind her, low and commanding, and it sent an inexplicable shiver down Celine's spine. She turned. The man standing there made Hyun-woo look like a boy playing dress-up. He was tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders that strained against his tailored black suit. His face was all sharp angles and controlled power, from his defined jawline to his intense dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her. But it was the way he carried himself that made her breath catch. Absolute authority. Like gravity rearranged itself around him. "Min-ho," Hyun-woo said, his smile faltering. "I didn't know you were attending." Clearly. Min-ho didn't look at the photographer. His eyes remained fixed on Celine, and the intensity in them made her heart hammer against her ribs. "Ms. Rivers, I'm Kang Min-ho. I've been hoping to meet you." He extended his hand. Celine hesitated for half a second. Something about him screamed danger, then placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, and sent electricity racing up her arm. "Celine," she managed, hating how breathless she sounded. "Nice to meet you. The pleasure is entirely mine." His thumb brushed across her knuckles before releasing her, so quick she almost thought she'd imagined it. "Your campaign has been captivating." "Thank you." She found her composure, straightening her spine. "Are you in fashion?" "Among other things." His smile was slight, dangerous. "I invest in beautiful ventures." The way he said beautiful while looking directly into her eyes made heat crawl up her neck. Hyun-woo cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, I'll leave you two to talk," he mumbled, disappearing into the crowd. Celine raised an eyebrow. "You scared him off." "Did I?" Min-ho's expression was innocent, but his eyes glittered with satisfaction. "How unfortunate. Is that your usual approach?" "Territorial intimidation. Only when something's worth protecting." He gestured toward the balcony. "Walk with me." Every instinct told her to say no. This man was dangerous, not in the obvious way, but in the way that made her pulse race and her defenses slam up simultaneously. But she found herself nodding. They stepped onto the empty balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The night air was cool against her bare shoulders, and she suppressed a shiver. Without a word, Min-ho shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was smooth, practiced, and his scent, sandalwood and something darker, wrapped around her like a claim. "I can handle the cold," she said. "I know." He leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "But I wanted an excuse to see you in my jacket." The honesty of it stunned her. Most men played games, circled, pretended. This one just stated his desire like a fact. "You're very direct," she said. "I find it saves time." He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her forget to breathe. "I saw you on that billboard 3 weeks ago. I haven't stopped thinking about you since." "That's..." She tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in her throat. "That's a line." "It's the truth." He stepped closer, and she should have stepped back, but her feet wouldn't obey. "You disrupted something in me, Celine." "I don't disrupt easily." "You don't even know me." "Then let me learn." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Have dinner with me tomorrow." "I don't date clients." "Or investors." "Or..." She gestured vaguely at him, trying to regain control of this conversation. "Whatever powerful category you fall into." Smart rule. His smile was slow, devastating. "Break it anyway." "Why would I do that?" "Because you feel it too." He was close enough now that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the dangerous intelligence burning behind his controlled exterior. "This thing between us. You felt it the second I walked up." She had. God help her, she had. But admitting it felt like stepping off a cliff. "You're very confident," she managed. "I know what I want." His eyes dropped to her lips, then back up. "And I always get what I want." "Always." The challenge escaped before she could stop it. "Always." The word hung between them like a promise and a threat. Celine's heart hammered. She should walk away. This man was too intense, too certain, too everything. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was one dinner. Public place. No expectations. His smile could have melted steel. "Tomorrow. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. I'll meet you there." "Still testing my control?" He looked amused. "Fine. I'll text you the address." "You don't have my number." He pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. Her private number, the one only Patricia and close friends had, glowed there like evidence. Celine's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I told you. I always get what I want." He stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes never left hers. "Tomorrow, Celine. Don't make me wait." He turned and walked back into the ballroom, leaving her standing there in his jacket, her pulse racing and her carefully constructed defenses in ruins. The following evening, Celine stood in front of her hotel room mirror, questioning every choice that had led to this moment. She'd changed outfits 4 times, ridiculous, considering this was just dinner, and finally settled on a black wrap dress that was elegant without trying too hard. "You're nervous," Patricia observed from the couch, eyebrow raised. "You're never nervous." "I'm not nervous." Celine adjusted her gold hoops. "I'm cautious. There's a difference. Girl, you Googled him for 2 hours last night." She had. And what she'd found had only complicated things. Kang Min-ho, 32, CEO of Kong Enterprises, a sprawling conglomerate with interests in everything from real estate to technology. But the deeper she dug, the stranger it got. Vague mentions of family business, photos of him at high-level political events, and an unsettling number of deleted articles about his father's death. The official story said car accident. The conspiracy theories said something much darker. "He's probably connected," Patricia warned. "These Korean chaebols always are." "And the way he looked at you last night? That wasn't business interest, honey. That was possession." "Which is exactly why this stays professional," Celine insisted, grabbing her clutch. "One dinner. I satisfy my curiosity, establish boundaries, and move on." Patricia's skeptical look said everything her mouth didn't. The restaurant was called Moon Garden, and it was the kind of place that didn't need signs because people who mattered already knew. Celine's cab dropped her at an unmarked door in Gangnam, where a hostess in a silk hanbok bowed deeply and led her through a hallway lined with paper lanterns. The private dining room took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a traditional Korean garden, lit by hundreds of floating lights. A low table was set with porcelain dishes that probably cost more than her first modeling contract. And there, standing by the window in a crisp white shirt and black slacks, was Min-ho. He turned when she entered, and the way his eyes traveled over her slow, appreciative, hungry, made her skin flush. "You came," he said. "You sound surprised." "Relieved." He moved toward her, and she caught that scent again, sandalwood and danger. "I wasn't sure you would. I keep my promises." She let him guide her to the table, hyper-aware of his hand hovering near her lower back without quite touching. Even when they're probably bad decisions. His smile was sharp. The best ones usually are. They settled across from each other, and a parade of dishes began arriving, each more beautiful than the last. Min-ho watched her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt almost protective. "Tell me about Brooklyn," he said, surprising her. "You did your homework." "I told you. I wanted to know you." He poured her tea, the gesture oddly intimate. "You grew up in Bed-Stuy. Full scholarship to NYU. First runway show at 21. But those are just facts. I want the story." Something about his genuine curiosity lowered her guard. "Why?" "Because you're fascinating." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "And because most people in your position would have accepted my first invitation, played coy, tried to leverage my interest. You made me work for this. I respect that." Celine found herself smiling. "My mother taught me never to give men what they want too easily. Makes them complacent." "Smart woman." "Terrifying woman," Celine corrected. "She raised 3 kids alone after my father left. Worked 2 jobs, never missed a parent-teacher conference, and somehow still found time to teach me that my curves were power, not shame." Min-ho's expression softened imperceptibly. "She sounds remarkable." "She is." Celine took a sip of tea. "Now your turn. Tell me about the Kang family empire." His walls slammed back up so fast she almost heard them. "What do you want to know?" "The truth." She met his eyes directly. "Because the internet is very careful about how it talks about you. Which tells me there's a lot it's not saying." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, slowly, he leaned back. "My father built his business through methods that weren't always Legal. I inherited that business and spent 3 years legitimizing it. Mostly. Mostly? There are some things that can't be cleaned completely. His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes watched for her reaction. Does that scare you? It should have. But instead of fear, she felt an odd sort of recognition. I grew up in a neighborhood where legitimate was relative. I'm not scared of complicated men, Min-ho. I'm wary of dishonest ones. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. I'll never lie to you. That's a bold promise. It's the only one that matters. He reached across the table, his hand open, waiting. I want to know you, Celine. All of you. And I want you to know me. The parts one don't show anyone. This was moving too fast. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings. But when she looked into his eyes, saw the genuine vulnerability beneath all that controlled power, she found her hand sliding into his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain, and something clicked into place in her chest that felt dangerously like fate. Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. Over the next 2 weeks, Min-ho appeared in Celine's life like weather, inevitable, impossible to ignore. He showed up at her photo shoots with coffee that was exactly how she liked it. He sent her books she'd mentioned wanting to read. He had her favorite Thai food delivered to her hotel room after 16-hour days, with handwritten notes that were sometimes funny, sometimes sweet, but always him. This is excessive, she told him one evening as she unwrapped what had to be the 5th gift that week, a vintage Chanel scarf she'd admired in passing. This is me courting you, he replied over the phone, his voice warm with amusement. Is it working? It's persistent. That's not a no. And it wasn't. Because despite her better judgment, Celine found herself looking forward to his texts, his surprise appearances, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in any room. He never pushed physically, was almost maddeningly respectful of her space, but the tension between them built like a storm-gathering force. The following Saturday, he invited her to a gallery opening. Celine arrived in an emerald silk dress that hugged her curves and found Min-ho waiting outside, devastating in all black. You're going to ruin me, he said by way of greeting, his eyes dark with want. Good. She took his offered arm, feeling bold. Maybe you need ruining. Inside, the gallery was packed with Seoul's art world elite. Min-ho kept her close, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as he introduced her to artists, collectors, critics. But what struck her was how people reacted to him, the immediate deference, the careful respect that bordered on fear. They're afraid of you, she whispered as they moved between exhibits. They're afraid of what I represent, he corrected. There's a difference. Which is? Me. They could learn to trust. My position. His smile was cold. That commands respect through consequences. A chill ran through her, but not entirely from fear. There was something darkly magnetic about his honesty, his refusal to pretend he was anything other than what he was. They were standing in front of an abstract sculpture when a voice interrupted. Min-ho, didn't expect to see you here. Celine turned to find a tall Korean man in an expensive suit, handsome in a slick, calculated way. His smile was friendly, but his eyes were assessing. Park Jae-won, Min-ho said flatly. Celine, this is a business associate. More than that, surely. Jae-won extended his hand to Celine. We've been friends since university. Park Jae-won. And you must be the famous Celine Rivers. Even more beautiful than your photos. His grip lingered too long. Min-ho's hand tightened on Celine's waist. Thank you, she said politely, extracting her hand. I heard you're here for 3 months, Jae-won continued, ignoring Min-ho's darkening expression. If you need someone to show you the real Seoul, the places tourists don't see, I'd be happy to volunteer. She has someone for that, Min-ho said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Jae-won's smile widened. Possessive already? It's only been, 2 weeks? Jae-won. The name was a warning. Relax, old friend. I'm just being friendly. But his eyes lingered on Celine's curves in a way that made her skin crawl. Though I understand the impulse. If I'd seen her first. Min-ho moved so fast Celine barely registered it. One moment they were standing apart, the next Min-ho had stepped between her and Jae-won, his body a wall of controlled violence. Touch her with your eyes one more time, Min-ho said quietly, and I'll remove them. The gallery seemed to hold its breath. Jae-won's smile finally faded. Still dramatic, he said, backing away. My apologies, Ms. Rivers. Enjoy your evening. He disappeared into the crowd. Celine exhaled slowly, her heart racing. That was necessary, Min-ho finished, turning to face her. His jaw was tight, his eyes still dark with barely contained fury. He disrespected you. He was just. I know what he was doing. Min-ho's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. And I won't tolerate anyone looking at you like you're something they can have. You're not an object. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. I'm what? She whispered. His eyes searched hers. Mine, he finally said, the word rough. Or I want you to be. If you'll let me. Every defense she'd built crumbled. Because this wasn't some smooth line or calculated seduction. This was raw, honest want from a man who clearly wasn't used to wanting anything he couldn't control. Min-ho, I know it's too fast. His forehead dropped to touch hers, his breath warm against her lips. I know I should be patient, strategic. But when I'm near you, all that discipline disappears. You make me reckless. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It's terrifying. His hand slid into her hair. And I don't care. She should pull away. Should establish boundaries, protect herself. Instead, she found herself tilting her face up, her lips inches from his. This is a bad idea, she breathed. The worst, he agreed. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was possession and promise and 3 weeks of tension exploding into something that made her knees weak. His hand tightened in her hair while his other arm banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Celine gasped, and he deepened the kiss, tasting her like she was something precious and profane simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-ho looked at her like he'd found religion. Come home with me, he said. The smart answer was no. The safe answer was no. Yes, she whispered instead. His penthouse was all glass and steel and breathtaking views, but Celine barely registered any of it. Min-ho kept touching her, her hand, her waist, her face, like he needed to confirm she was real. They made it as far as the living room before he kissed her again, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. Tell me to stop, he said against her mouth, even as his hands traced the curve of her waist. Tell me this is too fast, that you need time, and I'll wait. I'll wait forever if. She silenced him with a kiss that was all heat and decision. His control shattered. What followed was a blur of sensation, his hands learning every curve, her name on his lips like a prayer, the way he looked at her body like it was art he wanted to worship. There was intensity, breathless need, the overwhelming feeling of being completely, utterly claimed. And then there was closeness, vulnerability, two people discovering each other in the dark, and the terrifying intimacy of being truly seen. When Celine woke the next morning, dawn was painting the windows gold. She lay tangled in expensive sheets, her body aching in ways that made her flush with memory. Min-ho was asleep beside her, one arm thrown across her waist even in sleep, his face relaxed into something younger, almost innocent. This was dangerous. This was happening too fast. This was. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Patricia's name flashed across the screen along with 3 missed calls and a text. Where are you? Emergency at Zenith. They need you ASAP. Reality crashed back in. Celine carefully extracted herself from Min-ho's grip and began searching for her clothes in the pre-dawn darkness. She found her dress crumpled near the couch, her shoes in the hallway. Every movement felt like theft, stealing away before he woke, before this became something she'd have to define or defend. Because that's what women like her did to survive men like him. They left first. Before they could be left. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. "Celine." She froze, hand on the doorknob. Slowly, she turned. Min-ho stood in the bedroom doorway wearing only black boxer briefs, his hair messed from sleep, his eyes heavy with something that looked like hurt. "You were leaving," he said. "Not a question. I have to work. They need me." Without waking me. Without a word. He moved toward her, and she saw the vulnerability he was trying to hide behind controlled movements. "Did last night mean nothing to you? That's not fair. Then tell me what this is." He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch, but careful not to. "Because I just gave you parts of me I've never shown anyone, and you're running before sunrise like this was just," his jaw clenched. "Like I was just something to check off a list." "You don't understand," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "Then explain it to me." How could she? How could she tell him that every relationship she'd ever had ended with her being too much, too curvy, too ambitious, too confident for men whose egos couldn't handle a woman who shined? That she'd learned to leave first because staying only meant watching them leave anyway? "I can't do this right now," she said instead, pulling open the door. "Celine." But she was already gone, heels in hand, dress hastily zipped, fleeing into the morning before the sun could fully rise and show her all the ways she was already falling for a man who would only break her heart. Min-ho stood in his penthouse for 5 full minutes after she left, staring at the door like he could will her back through sheer force of want. Then he grabbed his phone and made a call. "Find out what happened at Zenith," he told Jae-sung. "And get me her schedule for the next week." "Boss, maybe you should give her space." "I didn't ask for advice." Min-ho's voice was ice. "Get it done." Because he'd seen the fear in her eyes when she looked at him, and it wasn't fear of him, it was fear of what he made her feel. He knew that terror intimately. He'd felt it himself the moment she'd walked into his life and dismantled every defense he'd spent years building. But unlike her, he wasn't running. Later that morning, Celine stood in Zenith's top-floor conference room, arms crossed, watching the creative director fumble through an explanation of why half their final campaign shots were unusable. Something about lighting, angles, not capturing the vision. "What you mean," Celine said coolly, "is that your photographer couldn't handle shooting a body that isn't sample size. Say it clearly so we can solve the actual problem." The room fell silent. The creative director flushed. "We'll reshoot," Patricia cut in smoothly. "With a photographer who knows what they're doing. We're not compromising the campaign because of incompetence." The meeting dissolved into logistics. Celine barely heard any of it. Her mind kept circling back to Min-ho's face when she'd tried to leave the raw hurt he'd tried to hide, the vulnerability she'd repaid by running. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot your earring. The left one. It's on my nightstand waiting for you to come back for it." Her heart stopped. Then, "I'm not letting you run, Celine. Whatever you're afraid of, we'll face it together. But you have to stop running long enough for me to prove it." She stared at the screen, emotions churning. How did he always know exactly what to say? "I'm sorry," she typed back. "For leaving like that." His response came immediately. "Have dinner with me tonight. Let me cook for you." "You cook?" "I'm a man of many talents." 8 p.m. "I'll send a car. I'll take a cab." Still testing my control. "Fine. Don't be late." Despite everything, she smiled. That evening, Celine arrived at his penthouse wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. When Min-ho opened the door, he looked at her like she'd arrived in a ball gown. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "You've seen me in designer clothes and you're impressed by jeans? I'm impressed by you." He stepped aside to let her in. "Everything else is just decoration." The penthouse smelled incredible, garlic, herbs, something rich and savory. Min-ho led her to the kitchen where he'd clearly been cooking for hours. Vegetables chopped with precision, pasta made from scratch, wine breathing on the counter. "You actually cook," she said, surprised. "My mother taught me before she died." He handed her a glass of wine, his fingers brushing hers. She said any man who couldn't feed himself, or the woman he loved, was only half-formed. The casual mention of love made her pulse skip. "Is that what you're doing? Feeding the woman you love?" He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I'm feeding the woman I'm falling in love with. There's a difference." The honesty stole her breath. "Min-ho, I know it scares you." He stepped closer, cupping her face with one hand. "I know you think this is too fast, too intense. But I've spent my entire life being careful, strategic, controlled. And then you walked into my world and made me feel alive for the first time since my parents died. So yes, I'm falling. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise." Tears pricked her eyes. "What if you change your mind? What if I'm not?" "You are." His thumb brushed away a tear that escaped. "You're everything. And I'm not your ex-boyfriends or whatever ghosts convinced you that you're too much. You're exactly enough. You're perfect." She kissed him then, tasting salt and wine and promise. He responded immediately, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her close. "Dinner's going to burn," she murmured against his mouth. "Let it." But he pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. "Actually, no. I spent 3 hours on that pasta. We're eating first." She laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "First?" His smile was wicked. "I'm a patient man when properly motivated." They ate at his dining table overlooking the city, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up with impossible expectations, about watching his father build an empire through fear and respect in equal measure. She told him about her mother's strength, about learning to love her body in a world that tried to shame it, about the loneliness of being successful in an industry that saw her as a category rather than a person. "You're not a category to me," Min-ho said quietly. "You're Celine. The woman who makes me want to be better. The woman I want to wake up next to every morning." "You're moving fast again. Would you prefer I lie? Pretend I'm not already planning a future with you in it?" "Most men would." "I'm not most men." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "And you deserve someone who isn't afraid of how much he wants you." The following week blurred into a dream. Min-ho took her to secret restaurants and hidden alleys, to dawn viewings at the top of Namsan Tower, to jazz clubs where he held her close and swayed to music that felt like it was written just for them. He showed her his soul, the real one, beyond the tourist spots and fashion districts. And everywhere they went, people noticed. Cameras flashed. Social media exploded with speculation. Korea's most eligible bachelor seen with stunning model. Kang Min-ho dating American beauty Celine Rivers? Patricia called her in a panic. The publicity is getting intense. Zenith's thrilled, your profile is skyrocketing, but some of the comments. Celine had seen them. The racist ones, the ones calling her a gold digger, the ones speculating about her body in ways that made her sick. But she'd also seen the supportive ones, the fans celebrating their relationship, the young black girls commenting that she made them feel seen. "I can handle it," she told Patricia. "Can you?" Because Min-ho's world, it's not just fashion and endorsements. There are rumors. "I know what he is," Celine interrupted. "He's been honest with me." "Has he?" "Honey, I'm worried about you. You're falling for him, and I get it. He's gorgeous and intense and clearly obsessed with you. But men like that? They're dangerous." "So am I," Celine said quietly. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Celine was leaving a photo shoot in Gangnam when a black van pulled up beside her. She had half a second to register danger before hands grabbed her, yanking her inside. She screamed, fought, felt something sharp prick her neck. Then darkness. Min-ho was in a meeting when Jae-sung burst in, his face pale. "Boss, it's Celine." Everything inside Min-ho went cold. What happened? She was taken. 20 minutes ago. We have the van on traffic cameras, but… Min-ho was already moving, phone out, dialing numbers that connected him to parts of his empire he'd tried to keep Celine away from. Lock down every exit out of Seoul. I want every man we have on this. Contact the Incheon syndicate. Tell them if they're harboring anyone involved. I'm burning their entire operation to the ground. Boss, we don't know who. I know exactly who. Min-ho's voice could have cut glass. Park Jae-won has been moving against me for months. This is his play. If you go after him without proof… I don't need proof. Min-ho was already in the elevator, Jae-sung scrambling to follow. I need my woman back. Everything else is negotiable. 20 minutes later, Min-ho stood in the center of his security command room, watching feeds from across the city. His phone rang, unknown number. Kang Min-ho, Jae-won's voice oozed through the speaker. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Where is she? Min-ho's voice was utterly calm, which made it more terrifying. Your pretty little model? Safe. For now. But we should discuss terms. The only term I'm interested in is where to send your body after I'm done with you. Jae-won laughed. Still so dramatic. Listen carefully. You've been consolidating power in territories I've spent years cultivating. I want them back. Sign over the Busan shipping contracts and the Incheon real estate holdings, and I'll return your pet unharmed. You hurt her. She's untouched. I'm not a monster. Jae-won's tone shifted. But if you don't deliver what I want by midnight, I might get creative. She really is stunning, Min-ho. I can see why you're obsessed. The threat was clear. Min-ho's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. You have 6 hours, he said quietly. Not to wait for my answer. To make peace with whatever god you believe in. Because I'm coming for you, and when I find you, hell will seem merciful compared to what I do. He ended the call and turned to Jae-sung. Pull everyone. I want Jae-won's known properties, his mistress's apartment, his mother's house, everywhere he's ever spent money. If he's breathing soul air, I want to know where. Boss, if we mobilize that aggressively, do you think I care about discretion right now? Min-ho's eyes were black with fury. The woman I love is terrified somewhere because of me. Because being with me put a target on her back. So I'm going to find her, eliminate the threat, and then spend the rest of my life making sure nothing like this ever happens again. Jae-sung had never seen his boss like this, unhinged, desperate, terrifying. He nodded and started making calls. Meanwhile, Celine woke on a concrete floor, head pounding. The room was dim, some kind of warehouse, with filtered light coming through dirty windows high above. Her wrists were bound with zip ties, and her ankles were similarly restricted. She's awake, a voice called. Footsteps approached. Celine looked up to find Park Jae-won crouching beside her, his smile cold. Ms. Rivers. I apologize for the rough treatment. If you cooperate, this will be over quickly. What do you want? Her voice was steadier than she felt. Leverage. Min-ho has something I need, and you're going to convince him to give it to me. He won't negotiate. Oh, he will. You don't understand how much you've changed him. Jae-won's eyes traveled over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. The great Kang Min-ho, undone by curves and confidence. Almost poetic. Touch me and you're dead, Celine said flatly. He laughed. Your confidence is charming. But you're not in a position to threaten anyone. He stood, pulling out his phone. Now smile for the camera. Let's give your boyfriend some motivation. The next hour was the longest of Celine's life. She was alone in the warehouse, her mind racing through escape scenarios. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where girls learned to fight. Could she break the zip ties, find a weapon, get to one of those windows? Then she heard it. Distant shouting. Gunfire, sharp cracks that echoed through the warehouse. Footsteps running, then screams cut short. The sounds of violence approaching like a storm. The warehouse door exploded inward. Min-ho walked through the smoke and debris like an avenging angel, his white shirt splattered with blood that clearly wasn't his. Behind him, a dozen men fanned out, weapons drawn. But it was Minho's face that made Celine's breath catch cold, lethal, and completely focused on finding her. Their eyes met across the warehouse. Celine. Her name left his lips like a prayer and a curse simultaneously. He crossed the distance in seconds, dropping to his knees beside her. His hands were shaking as he cut through the zip ties with a knife that looked like it had been used recently. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I'm okay, she managed, then gasped as he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Being with me put you in danger and Stop. She pulled back enough to see his face, seeing the genuine anguish there. This isn't your fault. And I'm okay. Where's J1? Minho's voice turned cold. He ran when the shooting started. Min-ho, what did you do? What I had to. He helped her stand, keeping her close. Can you walk? She nodded, and he immediately shed his jacket, draping it over her shoulders despite the blood. Then he turned to his men. Find J1. I want him alive. Boss, the police are being handled. Move. The next few hours were a blur. Min-ho took her to a private doctor who examined her thoroughly, gave her something for the headache, and declared her remarkably unharmed. Then to his penthouse, where he personally drew her a bath, made her tea, and sat beside the tub fully clothed, just watching her like he needed to confirm she was real. You should clean up, she said softly, noting the blood still on his shirt. You're making me nervous. None of it's mine. I know. That's what's making me nervous. He looked away. I told you what I was. What I'm capable of. Are you afraid of me now? Celine considered her answer carefully. She should be afraid. This man had just torn through his enemies to reach her, had clearly done violence she couldn't even imagine. But what she felt looking at him wasn't fear. I'm afraid of how much I love you, she said quietly. His eyes snapped back to hers, vulnerable and desperate. Say that again. I love you. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I've probably loved you since that first dinner, and it terrifies me. Because I know what it means to love someone like you, the danger, the complications, the fact that tonight probably won't be the last time someone tries to use me against you. I'll protect you. I know you will. But that's not the point. She stood up from the bath, water sluicing down her body, and watched his eyes darken with want even through his fear. The point is that I'm choosing this anyway. Choosing you, choosing us, choosing to trust that what we have is worth the risk. Min-ho stood slowly, grabbing a towel and wrapping her in it with shaking hands. Then he dropped to his knees in front of her. I love you, he said, looking up at her with everything he felt written across his face. I love you so much it's rewritten everything I thought I knew about myself. And I'm terrified too, terrified of losing you, terrified of not being enough, terrified that my world will destroy the best thing that's ever happened to me. Celine sank down to meet him, cradling his face in her hands. Then we'll be terrified together. He kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of promises. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he whispered. What? Marry me. He pulled back to look in her eyes. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 6 weeks. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I want you to be mine legally, publicly, permanently. I want everyone to know that you're under my protection, that harming you means declaring war on me. And more than that, I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night for the rest of my life. Tears streamed down Celine's face. You're insane. About you? Absolutely. His smile was crooked, vulnerable. Is that a yes? Every rational thought said to wait, to slow down, to be reasonable. But when had anything about them been reasonable? Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. His kiss was pure joy and relief and possession. He lifted her, carrying her to his bedroom, where he proceeded to show her exactly how much her answer meant to him. There was tenderness, there was passion, there was the overwhelming feeling of two people finding home in each other. Later, tangled in sheets and each other, Min-ho traced patterns on her skin. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About Jae-won. Did you find him?" "We did. He's handled." Celine looked up at him. "What does that mean?" "It means he'll never threaten you again. Or anyone else." Min-ho's expression was carefully neutral. "I won't give you details. I want to protect you from that part of my world. But I need you to understand that I did what was necessary. And I'd do it again without hesitation." She should be horrified. Should be questioning her choices. Instead, she found herself kissing his shoulder. "I understand," she said. "I don't need to know everything. I just need to know you'll always come for me." "Always," he promised. "Even if it means burning the entire world down." The following morning, Min-ho woke her with coffee and a velvet box containing a ring that made her gasp. A flawless diamond surrounded by emeralds, elegant and bold simultaneously. "It was my grandmother's," he said, sliding it onto her finger. "She was the only person who truly understood my father, who saw past the violence to the man underneath. I think she would have loved you." Celine admired how it caught the light. "When do you want to do this?" "Yesterday. But I'll give you time to plan something if—" "Next month," she interrupted. "Small ceremony. Just people we love. I don't need a spectacle. I just need you." His smile could have powered the city. "Next month, then. I'll have Jae-sung arrange everything. Your second-in-command is planning our wedding? He's extremely efficient. Plus, I'll be too busy making sure you don't change your mind." She laughed, the sound rich and happy. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good. Because I'm never letting you go." The next few weeks were chaos. Celine finished her Zenith campaign, which became a global phenomenon, with the images of her in Seoul going viral. Patricia negotiated 3 more major contracts and a cover shoot for Vogue. But through all of it, Min-ho was her constant, showing up at shoots with food, texting her throughout the day, making it clear to everyone in Seoul's fashion world that Celine Rivers was claimed. The wedding planning was surprisingly simple. They chose a private garden in Seoul, invited 50 people, and let Jae-sung handle logistics. Celine flew her mother and siblings in from New York, watching with amusement as her terrifying mother immediately took to Min-ho. "He's dangerous," her mother said approvingly over tea. "But he looks at you like you're oxygen." "That's good. That's what you deserve. You're not worried about the danger?" "Baby, I raised 3 kids in Bed-Stuy in the 90s. I know danger. This?" She gestured at Min-ho's penthouse. "This is a man who'd kill to protect you. That's not danger. That's security." The wedding day arrived with perfect spring weather. Celine wore a custom gown that celebrated every curve, with her hair swept up and her grandmother's pearls at her throat. When she walked down the aisle and saw Min-ho waiting devastating in a black tuxedo, his eyes bright with unshed tears, she knew with absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. Their vows were simple but devastating. Min-ho promised to love her fiercely, protect her ruthlessly, and choose her every single day for the rest of his life. Celine promised to stand beside him through whatever darkness came, to love him without fear, and to build a life together that honored them both. When the officiant pronounced them married, Min-ho kissed her like he was claiming her soul. The reception was intimate and perfect. They danced under string lights, ate food from both their cultures, and celebrated the impossible thing they'd built together. And when Min-ho whispered in her ear, "Take me home, Mrs. Kang," Celine felt her entire body ignite. That night, he made love to her as his wife, slowly, thoroughly, worshipfully. And when he whispered, "I told you that first night. After I had you, you'd never walk straight again. I'm making good on that promise," she laughed and pulled him closer, letting him prove exactly how much he meant it. 3 months later, Celine stood in their penthouse bathroom, staring at two pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her hand shook as she set it down. They'd talked about children eventually. But this soon? They'd only been married 3 months. What if? Celine? Min-ho's voice came from the bedroom. Are you okay? She stepped out, holding the test. His eyes dropped to it, widened, then met hers with wonder. We're pregnant, he whispered. She nodded, afraid of his reaction. But Min-ho crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees, pressing his face against her still flat stomach. Hello, little one, he murmured. I'm your father. And I promise both of you, that I will spend every day of my life making sure you're safe, loved, and know exactly how much you mean to me. Tears streamed down Celine's face as he stood and pulled her close. Are you happy? She asked. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You've given me everything, Celine. A future I never thought I deserved. A family. A reason to be better than what I was raised to be. We gave each other that, she corrected. You showed me what it means to be loved without conditions. To be wanted for exactly who I am. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hand playing possessively over her stomach. I love you, he said. Both of you. More than I have words for. I love you too, she whispered back. My dangerous, protective, impossible man. Your husband, he corrected with a smile. My husband, she agreed, kissing him again. 6 months later, Celine sat in a private hospital room, exhausted and glowing, holding their daughter. Min-ho sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, staring at the tiny person in her arms with absolute awe. She has your eyes, Celine said softly. And your beauty. He touched their daughter's impossibly small hand, watching it curl around his finger. She's perfect. What should we name her? Min-ho looked at Celine with so much love it made her chest ache. Hope. Because that's what you gave me. Hope for a future I never imagined. Hope Kang, Celine tested the name. I like it. As if agreeing, baby Hope yawned and settled deeper into Celine's arms. Outside the window, Seoul glittered in the darkness, a city that had witnessed their impossible love story. From a billboard meeting to obsession, from danger to devotion, from fear to family. They'd built something real in a world of shadows and risk. And as Min-ho kissed Celine's temple, his other hand resting on their daughter, Celine knew that every terrifying choice, every leap of faith, every moment of vulnerability had been worth it. Because she'd found her home. Not in a city or a penthouse. But in this man who'd looked at her like she was everything and then spent every day proving it. I love you, Min-ho whispered against her hair. I know, she whispered back, smiling. You tell me every day. I'll tell you every day for the rest of our lives. And he did. You made it to the end, and that means you're truly part of the African Korean Tales family. Thank you for your support. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be replying as always, and stay subscribed because the next story is already waiting for you.